Part 2. The Revelation of Fire. The crystals pulsed with light as Wei Zhaoran helped Ling Xuanyu to his feet, their spiritual energies already resonating in harmonious patterns that made the air shimmer. The chamber that had felt cold and corrupt now thrummed with potential, as if even ancient formations recognized they were about to witness something unprecedented. The original text, Ling Xuanyu said, voice weak but gaining strength as Wei Zhaoran's warmth flowed into him. If they mention paired cultivation, there must be specific requirements. Xuanyu. Wei Zhaoran's hands cupped his face gently. Stop thinking like a scholar and feel what's happening between us. True. Their spiritual signatures were merging at the edges, ice and fire creating something beyond both elements. Where Ling Xuanyu's cultivation was precise and controlled, Wei Zhaoran's brought warmth and fluidity. Together, they were creating something entirely new. The resonance, Ling Xuanyu breathed, it's not just compatibility, it's completion. Exactly. Wei Zhaoran smiled as he guided them to kneel facing each other at the formation center. You've been trying to fracture one soul into pieces, but the technique was designed to fracture two souls and reweave them together, creating something stronger that either could be alone. The understanding settled between them, beautiful, inevitable, transformative. Ling Xuanyu felt hope stirring in places he thought dead, warmth returning to hollow spaces empty for so long he'd forgotten what fullness felt like. If this fails, it won't. Wei Zhaoran interrupted with absolute confidence. Look at me, beloved. Really look. Ling Xuanyu met his eyes and saw love so profound it stole his breath. Not desperate infatuation, but deep, steady devotion of someone who had chosen him with full knowledge of the cost, who had seen him broken and decided broken was still worth everything. I've loved you for 3 years. Watched you, studied you, learned every expression, every gesture. I know when you're pleased, when you're concerned, when you're hiding pain. I know you better than anyone alive. And I'm telling you with certainty, we were made for this. His hands covered Ling Xuanyu's where they rested on his knees, fingers intertwining naturally. Trust me, he whispered. Trust us. Let me show you what love can do when given freely, completely, without reservation. The meditation pose arose naturally from their joined essences, body settling into perfect symmetry. Ling Xuanyu's hands rested palm up on his knees, Wei Zhaoran's palm down atop them, creating a circuit of energy that hummed with potential. The fracturing, Ling Xuanyu said, voice distant with cultivation trance, begins with releasing conscious control, letting the soul separate along natural divisions rather than forcing artificial breaks. I understand, Wei Zhaoran replied, voice harmonizing with his partners as breathing synchronized. And when the fragments form, they'll seek their complements in your spiritual essence, ice calling to fire, structure seeking fluidity, precision finding balance in intuition. Ling Xuanyu's eyes closed. If the texts are correct, the process should feel like the world exploded in sensation. It began as gentle warmth spreading from their joined hands, but within heartbeats, it became a wave that consumed every barrier between them. Ling Xuanyu felt his spiritual boundaries dissolving, his soul opening to reveal chambers he'd kept locked even from himself. Wei Zhaoran's essence poured into those empty spaces, bringing memories, emotions, experiences that belonged to both of them now. Ling Xuanyu saw himself through Wei Zhaoran's eyes, not the perfect, untouchable master he tried to be, but a man of devastating beauty made more precious by hidden vulnerabilities, more worthy of love because of burdens carried, not despite them. In return, his consciousness expanded to encompass Wei Zhaoran's perspective, discovering depths that defied everything he thought he knew. Beneath the playful exterior was a mind of steel, calculating and strategic in ways that rivaled the greatest military tacticians. The confidence was real, built on absolute self-knowledge and perfectly directed skill. Gods, Wei Zhaoran gasped, voice echoing in the space between their merged consciousnesses. You're so much more than you let anyone see. The weight you carry, the decisions you make in silence, how have you borne it alone so long? Not alone anymore, Ling Xuanyu replied, words carrying wonder, relief, joy so profound he threatened to unmake him. Never alone again. The soul fracture technique, practiced correctly, was nothing like the agonizing self-destruction he'd endured. Instead of tearing pieces away, it felt like careful unwrapping, revealing aspects they never knew existed, creating space for growth, for transformation like it only come through perfect trust. His soul divided along lines of natural strength, each fragment seeking its complement in Wei Zhaoran's spiritual essence with the inevitability of rivers flowing to sea. Where ice met fire, they created steam carrying both properties. Where precision met fluidity, they forged wisdom transcending either alone. And where duty touched love, they birthed devotion so pure it could power the mountain's defenses alone. Most importantly, where hollow spaces opened to receive Wei Zhaoran's warmth, healing began. Not temporary relief, but genuine restoration of what was lost. "I can feel you," Wei Zhaoran whispering, voice now coming from inside Ling Xuanyu's mind and through his eyes. "And I you," Ling Xuanyu replied, marveling at existing in two places at once, himself and also the warm golden presence that had become as familiar as his own heartbeat. They were still themselves, individual, distinct, separate in ways that mattered, but also something new, unprecedented in cultivation history. Two souls that had chosen to become permanently intertwined, strengths doubled and weaknesses made irrelevant by perfect complementarity. The technique completed as naturally as sunrise, merged consciousness settling into patterns that felt ancient as mountains and new as spring's first flower. When they opened their eyes, the chamber had transformed. Crystal formations no longer pulsed with sickly light, but blazed with clean energy. The corrupted array had rewritten themselves, twisted patterns now flowing in harmonious spirals. "How do you feel?" Wei Zhaoran asked, though he already knew through their bond. "Whole," Ling Xuanyu replied, the word carrying wonder, relief, joy so profound it made air sparkle. He rose with fluid grace, pulling Wei Zhaoran up, and together they moved through exercises to test merged capabilities. Where Ling Xuanyu had struggled to channel fracture power without losing himself, now energy flowed naturally. Where Wei Zhaoran's cultivation had felt constrained by individual limitations, now he had access to depths that transformed him into something approaching divine. Most importantly, the hollow ache plaguing Ling Xuanyu was gone, replaced by completion so perfect it brought tears. He wasn't less than before, he was exponentially more, strength amplified by willing partnership rather than diminished by desperate sacrifice. "The sect will feel the change," Wei Zhaoran observed, hand-fighting Ling Xuanyu's with unconscious familiarity. "Let them feel it," Ling Xuanyu replied, carrying new harmonics of confidence and warmth. "Let them understand their sect leader has found something more valuable than strength alone." They stood marveling at the transformation when the first alarm bells began to ring. The sound echoed through layers of stone and spiritual barriers, carrying urgent rhythm that meant only one thing: the sect was under attack. Wei Zhaoran's eyes met Ling Xuanyu's, and in that shared glance passed entire conversations about duty, timing, and the cruel irony of finding perfect happiness just as external forces threatened everything they held dear. "It seems," Wei Zhaoran said, with a smile holding anticipation and deadly promise, "we are about to test our new capabilities in actual combat." "Indeed," Ling Xuanyu's smile sharp as winter wind and warm as summer fire, perfect fusion of both natures. They moved through hidden passages with synchronized steps, merged consciousness allowing perfect coordination without speaking. By the time they emerged onto main courtyards, the assault scope was clear. 3 separate forces converged among Quilongs from different directions, their approach coordinated with military precision, speaking of months of planning. The Crimson Blade Sect approached from the east, redder robes blazing against the mountainside, as they overwhelmed outer defenses through sheer numbers. From the west came the Shadow Moon Alliance, black-clad figures melting in and out of darkness using stealth techniques to bypass traditional barriers. From the south came the Poison Flower Cult, multicolored robes creating a rainbow of death as they filled air with toxic vapors to weaken defenders. 3,000 cultivators, Wei Zhaoran observed, enhanced spiritual senses cataloging threats with humans' precision. All at least foundation establishment level, with perhaps 2,000 core formation masters leading each force. More than enough to overwhelm most sects, Ling Xuanyu agreed, awareness expanding to encompass the entire battlefield, but not nearly enough to threaten what we've become. The Great Hall filled with disciples as alarm bells continued, 5,000 white-robed figures arranging in perfect formation. Elder Flang arrived with tactical reports, usually calm demeanor showing Craggs as he processed the coordinated assault scale. Sect leader, he began, and then stopped as he truly looked at the two figures at the hall's head. Where Ling Xuanyu had always radiated cold perfection, now he blazed with warmth, making air shimmer with potential. Where Wei Zhaoran had been merely talented, now he carried himself with absolute confidence, speaking of power beyond normal limits. But most striking was how they stood together, not master and disciple, but equals, spiritual energies dancing around each other in patterns making seasoned cultivators' eyes water. The situation, Ling Xuanyu inquired, voice carrying easily despite conversational pitch. 3 coordinated assaults, Elder Fang reported, training letting him focus despite obvious confusion. They're using formation-breaking talismans to overcome barriers through attrition. At current rates, our outer defenses will fail within 4 hours. 4 hours, Wei Zhaoran mused, tone suggesting the timeline was almost insultingly generous. More than sufficient. We? Elder Fang's bush cracked. Yes, Ling Xuanyu said simply, hand-finding Wei Zhaoran's in full view of every assembled disciple. Wei Zhaoran is no longer merely my student. He is my partner in all things, cultivation, leadership, and defending everything we've built together. Gasps echoed through the hall as implications sunk in, but Ling Xuanyu continued before anyone could object. You have served with honor your entire lives. You've trained with dedication, followed orders with precision, maintained standards making this sect the cultivation world's envy. Tonight, you'll discover why that devotion was not misplaced. He gestured, and spiritual energy flowed out to touch every person, not invasively, but with gentle contact, speaking of absolute protection, unshakable strength, infinite care. We are not merely powerful, he continued, words carrying harmonics of Wei Zhaoran's voice as merged consciousness spoke with one will. We are inevitable. What approaches our mountain tonight will learn why the Eternal Peak sect has stood unconquered for 3 centuries. A cheer rose from assembled disciples, different from usual formal acknowledgments. This was personal, emotional, touched with fierce loyalty coming not from duty, but from genuine love for those leading them. To your positions, Ling Xuanyu commanded, and 5,000 cultivators moved as one body, flowing into the night with perfect coordination impossible without absolute trust. When the last disciple departed and great doors closed with echoing finality, Ling Xuanyu and Wei Zhaoran stood alone, joined hands, the only stillness in a world suddenly filled with motion and danger. Ready? Wei Zhaoran asked, though their bong meant he already knew. I've been ready for this my entire life, Ling Xuanyu replied, smiled bright with anticipation and deadly promise. I simply didn't know what this was until tonight. They rose into air without swords or external aids, merged cultivation technique allowing flight through pure spiritual energy manipulation. Behind them, the mountain blazed with defensive formations powered by thousands' devotion, but ahead lay something far more impressive. 2 souls moving in perfect harmony, combined strength about to redefine what the cultivation world understood about power. The Crimson Blade sect met them first, their leader raising his weapon as thousands of red-robed figures spread across eastern slopes. Ling Xuanyu, his man shouted, voice carrying arrogance of someone who never encountered truly overwhelming force. Your sect's rings end tonight. Surrender now, and we might let your disciples find new masters. The response came not in words, but demonstration. Ling Xuanyu and Wei Zhaoran descended like twin stars, merged spiritual energy manifesting as pure power. A dragon made of ice and fire sweeping through enemy ranks like divine breath. But it wasn't destruction they brought. Everywhere the dragon touched, cultivators found spiritual energy sealed, weapons powerless, consciousness gently overwhelmed by force so absolute that resistance became meaningless. They felt unconscious, bodies unmarked, cultivation foundations intact but temporarily inaccessible. Impossible, gasped the Crimson Blade leader watching his assault dissolved. No one has that kind of power. No one can pacify an entire army without killing.
You're correct, Wei Zhaoran said, voice carrying easily despite distance. But we, Ling Xuanyu, continue seamlessly, words weaving together in perfect harmony, are no longer bound by individual cultivation's limitations. The Shadow Moon Alliance tries stealth techniques, melting into darkness and striking from unexpected angles with poisons and curses that would have failed ordinary cultivators. But nothing could hide from consciousness existing in two places simultaneously, perceiving threat from perspectives defying three-dimensional thinking. Where shadows gathered, light bloomed, not harsh or blinding, but warm and welcoming, illumination making concealment impossible while remaining beautiful. The Alliance's masters found sophisticated techniques unraveling, carefully hoarded secrets rendered unuseful against opponents who could anticipate moves before they formed. How? Demanded the Alliance's leader as her forces fell around her. How can you counter techniques you've never seen? Because, Ling Xuanyu replied almost gently, true strength lies not in hoarding power, but in sharing it completely. The poison flower cult's assault lasted less than 10 minutes. Their deadly vapors crystallized and felt harmless at the moment they encountered the clean energy field surrounding their merged pair. Their most virulent toxins transformed into healing mist that actually strengthened the mountain's defenders. Their leader, a woman whose cultivation was built entirely on causing suffering, found herself facing opponents whose strength grew from its opposite. This is not possible, she whispered, rainbow brogue suddenly seeming tawdry and false in such overwhelming light's presence. Pain is the only true teacher. Suffering is the only path of strength. You cannot be more powerful than those who've embraced darkness. You're wrong, Wei Zhaoran said, voice carrying infinite compassion for someone who built her entire philosophy on such fundamental misunderstanding. Pain teaches only pain. Suffering creates only more suffering. True strength comes from love willingly given, trust freely shared, souls that choose to become more together than they ever could be alone. The battle ended with all three enemy forces unconscious, but not harmed, weapons sealed but not destroyed, cultivations temporarily inaccessible but not permanently damaged. It was a demonstration of power so absolute, so overwhelming, that news of it would reshape the cultivation world's understanding of what was possible. But for Ling Xuanyu and Wei Zhaoran, hovering above the battlefield in pre-dawn light, the most important victory was personal. They'd faced their first test as a unified pair and emerged not only victorious but transformed, no longer master and disciple, no longer even merely lovers but something entirely new in cultivation history. The disciples are watching, Wei Zhaoran observed, head tilted toward the mountain where 5,000 white-robed figures had witnessed their leader's unprecedented power display. Let them watch, Ling Xuanyu replied, turning to face his partner fully, no longer caring who might see or what they might think. Let the entire world watch. The kiss they shared above defeated armies was witnessed by representatives from half the cultivation world who'd come to expect to see the eternal peak Sect destruction and instead saw its evolution. It was a kiss tasting like victory and feeling like coming home, a declaration that some bonds were stronger than propriety, more important than reputation, more lasting than others' approval. When they broke apart, both smiled with quiet joy that comes from finding exactly where one belongs in the universe. So, Wei Zhaoran said with characteristic playfulness, the voice shaking slightly with emotion. What happens now? Now, Ling Xuanyu replied, voice warm with contentment and anticipation, we return home. We face whatever questions our disciples might have. We begin the work of ruling together as we were always meant to. And tonight, he paused, smile growing warmer, more intimate, touched with promises making the air shimmer with possibility. We explore the more personal aspects of souls that have chosen to become permanently intertwined. They descended toward Mount Qinglong hand in hand, merged spiritual energy painting aurora patterns across dawn sky, while below them the greatest sect in the cultivation world prepared to enter a new age, one where power came not from isolation but from connection, not from sacrifice but from love freely given and completely shared.
The sun rose over eastern peaks as they landed in the great courtyard, where disciples waited with expressions ranging from awe to confusion to fierce loyalty transcending mere duty. Elder Fang stepped forward as a representative, weathered face creased with questions he wasn't sure he was brave enough to ask. Sect leader, he began, then corrected himself carefully. Sect leaders, how shall we explain to the cultivation world what they witnessed tonight? Ling Xuanyu and Wei Zhaoran exchange glances, carrying entire conversations, bond allowing communication at speeds defying mortal comprehension. Then Ling Xuanyu stepped forward, voice carrying clearly across the courtyard and beyond, to where allied sect representatives waited with barely concealed amazement. "You will explain," he said, words infused with quiet authority no one would dare question. "That the Eternal Peak Sect is led by two souls who discovered true strength comes not from standing alone, but from choosing to stand together. That power shared willingly is infinitely greater than power hoarded selfishly. That love, far from being weakness, is the foundation upon which all lasting strength must be built." He paused, letting words settle. "And you will explain that any sect, any cultivator, any force seeking to challenge us will find themselves facing not one opponent, but two who have become inseparable, whose techniques complement perfectly, whose dedication to each other and those under their protection is absolute." A murmur ran through assembled disciples, not shock or disapproval, but recognition, as if finally seeing clearly something they'd sensed but not understood for years. "Questions?" Wei Zhaoran asked, tone gentle but carrying undertones that suggested certain questions would be unwise. Elder Feng cleared his throat nervously. "The other sects will want to understand your partnership's nature. How shall we address inquiries about succession, about leadership structure, about—" He trailed off, clearly struggling with phrasing questions about the more intimate aspects everyone had witnessed. "Our partnership," Ling Xuanyu said simply, "encompasses all aspects of leadership and life. We rule jointly, decide jointly, face all challenges jointly. As for succession," he smiled, expression warm with possibilities stretching far into the future, "that is the conversation for another day, when the cultivation world has had time to adjust to what we've become." "And the prisoners?" another elder asked, gesturing toward unconscious forms scattered across the mountainside. "Will be held until they wake, then given a choice. Return to their sect with news of what they witnessed, or remain here as students if they wish to learn what strength through unity truly means. Some wisdom can only be taught through example." The assembled disciples murmured approval, sounds speaking of understanding, acceptance, and fierce pride that came from serving leaders who just redefined what power looked like. "To your duties, then," Ling Xuanyu said, tone warm but carrying clear dismissal. "The mountain has been defended, our enemy scattered, our strength proven beyond question. Now begins the work of building something new." The disciples dispersed with quiet efficiency, speaking of absolute trust in their leadership, leaving the two sect leaders alone in the courtyard, as morning sun painted everything in shades of gold and promise. "Well," Wei Zhaoran said, characteristic playfulness returning now that crisis had passed, "that went better than expected." "Did it?" Ling Xuanyu asked, though smiles suggested complete agreement. "We just announced to the cultivation world that we're bound in ways never attempted before, that our power comes from sources they don't understand, that we intend to rule jointly in defiance of every tradition they hold sacred. And they can accept it or learn why acceptance is their only viable option," Wei Zhaoran replied with cheerful confidence. "Besides, after what they witnessed tonight, I suspect most will be too busy trying to understand our techniques to waste time questioning our relationship." "Our techniques," Ling Xuanyu must, flexing fingers still tingling with residual spiritual energy. "True," Wei Zhaoran agreed, stepping closer until they shared the same breath, the same space, the same moment of perfect possibility. "Perhaps it's time to begin that exploration in earnest." "Perhaps it is," Ling Xuanyu replied, voice dropping to intimate register reserved for lovers rather than sect leaders. "Though I should warn you, souls permanently intertwined experience everything more intensely than those who remain separate." "Everything," Wei Zhaoran's smile was radiant with anticipation. "Everything," Ling Xuanyu confirmed with smile growing warmer, more intimate, touched with promises making morning air seem to catch fire. They walked toward their private chambers hands in hand,
merged spiritual energy, creating aurora patterns in their wake, while around them Mount Xinglong settled into its new reality. A sect ruled not by one perfect, untouchable master, but by two souls who discovered true strength comes not from standing alone, but from choosing to stand together. That power shared willingly is infinitely greater than power hoarded selfishly. That love, far from being weakness, is the foundation upon which all lasting strength must be built. Behind them, the great mountain's defensive formations hummed with renewed strength, powered not by duty alone, but by love freely given, trust completely shared, and the kind of bond that would endure until the last star burned cold in the infinite sky. The cultivation world would adapt, as it always had, but it would never again be quite the same, for it had witnessed the birth of something unprecedented, a partnership transcending every boundary between power and love, strength and vulnerability, the individual and the infinite. And in the private chambers of the Eternal Peak Sect leaders, as morning sunlight streamed through windows never before admitting such warmth, two souls began the intimate exploration of what it truly meant to become one, while remaining eternally, perfectly, inevitably two. The end.
Appreciate you watching. Hit subscribe, like, and share. See you in the next story.